και τον Jake Brown για να μοιράσουν τη γνώση τους μαζί μας. Εάν χρειάζεται μετάφραση, μπορείτε να με την ταυτότητα ή το διαβατήριό σας. Welcome to the 10th year's Athens Bar Show. We've got with us Anastatia and Jake Brown, and they're going to share their knowledge with us.
There you go, you actually have one now.
Well, this nice lady over here was willing to share her microphone.
I don't share microphones with him. He always takes it away from me.
Oh, yeah, just when you've been talking for 10 minutes and not letting me say anything.
Okay, you start.
25 years.
25 years.
Why 25 years ago?
Because...
Is that when we fell into this?
That's when we fell into this business.
We actually didn't intend to. We did not intend to write a book about martinis. A friend said, you know this internet? I think it's going to be big. You should get on it, make a website. And she said, we're going to make a website on it. I was holding 2 martinis. We built the martini website. In 6 months, it was huge. Everyone contributed to it. An editor from New York emailed and said we want to turn it into a book. And it became the world's best-selling book on the martini. I think it's, 500 copies now. And suddenly, we were judging cocktail competitions, writing for drinks magazines, very quickly working in a distillery.
Yeah, but the whole time we started learning something that we didn't realize wasn't around. We didn't know, first of all, when we wrote the book, that the martini had become popular all of a sudden. Last time I had looked, everybody was still drinking vodka and cranberry juice. All of a sudden, people were looking and saying, well, what's a Manhattan? What's a cocktail? Okay, this is interesting. So we started digging. And this is when we actually ended up falling on a profession we never thought would ever happen, which is being drink historians. What does that mean? Being nosy. Being able to give you guys some idea of things you can tell your customers when they say, well, what's this drink about? You know, what's a Bloody Mary? Where does this come from? You know, you have to have things to talk about other than whether or not a certain whiskey's good and whether or not it's marketable. You really have to give them a good story to make them enjoy what they're drinking, because that's part of your job, other than making them smile.
More than just being able to make a good presentation to a customer. The more we researched in history, or we discovered, they actually know a lot more than we do. It's true, you know, because there was a lot more years that they had in that time, and some of the discoveries have been absolutely mind-blowing.
Okay, well let's start off really simple. Yeah, I can sit here and tell you have to start looking at history. So let's start looking first of all at some of the people who have looked at history, just to get an idea.
The real answer to this is everyone, of course, whether you realize it or not, has been inspired by history, but...
I'm going to start off with a very close friend, dear friend of ours who passed away a couple of years ago, Dick Bratzel. He was the father of London bartending. He invented the espresso martini, the bramble, the wibble, the Russian spring punch. I mean, he invented more drinks that have been universally adapted and enhanced over the past 35 years, almost 40 years. And it's all because he got interested in simple 3 to 4 ingredient drinks from the 1800s. Lola.
In Vancouver in the mid-1980s, she had a martini, 60 different martini variations on it. So that whole martini craze that was invented in New York in the late 90s, actually it was Lola. In the mid-80s in Vancouver, she was the one who started that whole thing.
Well, she did start something else too.
A lot of those drinks we're happy not to see anymore. They were vodka and some liqueur, or the one that one of her bartenders invented, the green apple martini.
God forbid, but Lola was responsible for the green apple martini being put on the menu because the guy invented the drink the night before they opened.
She took it off the menu after a couple of months. The customers demanded that the drink back. And after, what was it, about 4 years, she closed the restaurant and she went into real estate. Specifically.
What do you mean 4 years? She was open from 1996 until 2008.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
That went.
Yeah.
So, you know, she closed the bar, she went into a new business simply to get away from the smell of the green apple martini.
But she did admit one thing, the drink was so popular despite her anxiety over it, because she had made a beautiful apple drink with Calvados and gin, and it was gorgeous. But the fact that this one drink was 20,000 of them a month, she paid for her entire house in cash in Hollywood. So, you know, all because of the inspiration, again, of 3-ingredient drinks. She looked at old classic cocktail books and said, okay, this is a great idea.
Imagine trying to do that with a drink that required 7 ingredients.
No.
It wouldn't happen.
No.
But, come on, let's move on.
Okay, and Charles Schumann is another one who living icon, again, looked at what was considered to be a simple drink that he could offer with food as a food offering. At the time, in Germany, the only bars you could find were hotel bars, and they were kind of sleepy, actually, and they didn't really know how to make many good cocktails. So when he came along with this idea of, hey, let's revive the idea of just dedicated great cocktails, and yes, food is secondary to the whole system, he created a whole new trend or structure that could happen in Germany that is now very, very consistent, and it's outside of our hotels. But, now here's what you might not know about. This also came from history. When you look at if you ever hear about the Tokyo small bar culture, it's been going on for over a century. Little tiny bars. Can you imagine owning a bar that only fits 15 people, 25 people, tops 30, and still have people come in every single night because they want what you have, and they have a permanent audience. They're not worried about a new audience, just permanent audience. Well, somebody came to New York, they'd come from Japan, decided to open up a bar called Angel Share in 1994. It was the first speakeasy bar. Every single drink in the place was 3 ingredients. You could get a martini, you could get a Manhattan, you could get, I think you could get a shochu soda at the time, which is a very rare place. It still exists to this day. If you ever happen to get to New York, you must go to it. It's above a sushi bar. You'll never find it otherwise. It's a tiny little staircase. You have to go behind the sushi bar to get to it. But once you're in there, you're in heaven. This is the whole idea. But you know who was inspired by that? Sasha Petrosky, the man who created what everybody knows as the New York speakeasy culture. Year 2000 is when he opened up his first one, and it looked like a clothes tailor shop in the middle of a slum. It was great. And you go in, and it was a jewel in heaven. But again, inspired by 20 speakeasies, he was constantly coming to visit us to look at our library because he wanted to find more drinks that he hadn't found and tried to perfect.
And he wanted to be as accurate as possible.
He was an accuracy maniac. It was ridiculous. Another one, Nick Strangeway. he took another view of it. Is he looked at the things that Jerry Thomas and Harry Johnson did that people didn't think about, is that you could batch cocktails in advance. You didn't have to make them a la minute. You could make bottled cocktail, you could make an aged cocktail, and it would be brilliant to have something you could serve out to an audience without having to have to worry about it. He's actually introduced the system again, reintroduced the system to a number of hotel bars and restaurants in the UK, and they picked up on it and said, hey, no, this is great. I can actually have something chilled, all I have to do is pour it out, just like they used to in the 1860s. You learn a lot of stuff, and people say, ooh, that's innovative. That is innovative. Dale de Groff is another one. When did you learn how to flame a twist?
In 1990, I started work as a waiter at the Rainbow Room where Dale was bartending. The first words he ever said to me was, hey you want to see how I flame a twist?
Not again. But it was, a great technique. It was something at the Rainbow Room. When you went in the Rainbow Room, you expected class. You expected something different. His boss had handed him a book and said, here, learn about classic cocktails, see what you can do with it. And then he found something fun to make it even more entertaining, and people sat there and go, ooh, wow. But again, that's what we need to be able to do, is find inspiration to do these sorts of things. Audrey, another great one, Pegu Club. She decided, okay, you look at these books, but the taste level's different. Okay, taste level's different, so what did she come up with? She came up with the old Havana.
To give you one of her secrets, she will make a drink a minimum of 100 times before it.
She's very tedious.
I first experienced this when Tanqueray Rainpour was launching in the States. I was working as the photo stylist, creating the drinks for their first ads. And it was an all-Japanese photography team working with me. Afterwards, I said to them, I would love to take you out to a bar in New York. And there were 2 bottles of Tanqueray Rainpour left. And I asked if I could take those. And one of the Tanqueray people said, yes, but we're not launched yet, so don't give it to anyone in the industry. And I said, oh, it's just a friend who's passionate about gin.
Liar, liar, pants on fire.
We arrived at the bar, me and 7 Japanese guys were sat at a table. I gave Audrey the 2 bottles. We ordered our drinks. I look over when Audrey says, Jerry, I need a bottle right now. I said, those are the only 2 in the country. Damn it! I look, she has just made 34 very slight variations on a gimlet. And so she shrugged, and just as our drinks arrived, she sent 34 gimlets to the table. These poor Japanese guys, they said, is this what it's like in New York bars? And I said, yes. And it will be rude if we don't finish these.
They were in really good shape when they left. Really good shape. But now, okay, there's been some rediscovered traditions in the past 25 years that I'm still feeling really good about. In fact, some of you do them really well.
Stop. I'm going to rush you through a bunch of this because the next stuff that you've got in here is gold. Forgive me, I'm just letting you know that I'm pressuring her to get through these parts because when we get back to the 1500s and stuff, that is really good. Okay, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You explain this one.
How many people in here throw? Yes!
Okay.
This is so good to see because 12 years ago, 13 years ago, I think we found 10, 12 people in the world. So it was crazy. It's the first description of a cocktail shaker ever. 1869 magazine described the man shaking, but then separating it and throwing. So the first time a cocktail shaker was ever described, it was described being used to throw. in addition to shaking. And up to the 1960s, every bartender, well actually no, 1900 every bartender, and then in parts of the world still every bartender. Then it got down to a bar in Barcelona, and that was where we went to learn from her.
That's pretty good.
Why learn the technique? Because it gives the clarity of stirring with more aeration than shaking. So for some drinks, it gives a superior flavor and mouthfeel.
But also it gives great showmanship, which surprisingly, because her father was born in Cuba and had worked at Floridita under Constante, and no one had ever thought about looking at how Constante used to make his daiquiris before the blender arrived. And there's a very, very distinct description of him throwing his drinks. So
there's another in a book called San Cristobal de la Habana
okay.
from Joseph Hildesheimer. And unlike the Basil Woon book you're referring to, when it's Cuba, you can actually still buy a copy of Hildesheimer's book.
And if you're really curious, you can get on to euvslibrary.org. And I have all of the... .com. Was it .com or .org?
.com.
Okay. But we digitized at least 25 Cuban cocktail books that you can look at and reference for yourself.
Oh yeah, if you want to read to the old cocktail books, we've digitized about 150 of them. And they're on euvslibrary.com. No branding, no password, searchable throughout the library.
All
so
free. We don't care.
Have fun.
Have fun, enjoy
Next.
yourself. Another one, free pour. There was a certain point where people were going on and on that you had to precisely measure everything down to why don't I have an eyedropper. They forgot for a while about this man who could make you the most beautifully potent martini on the planet. Eyeballed, not measured, but perfectly measured. I mean, I have yet to see a drink where he hasn't been able to do 30 mils on the spot, just through horseback.
How? He measured the first 1,000, the second 1,000, he measured every other. Then, every so often he would measure. But after you've poured 10,000 times, you should be able to do it even without the measure.
Amen.
And it simply depends on your style, and it's your choice and your presentation.
Okay, so let's get down to reality here. There was, again, as I said, there was a point where people were having these arguments about what was the original martini. Was it 3.5 to 1 versus 4 to 1? No, you should only put 15 mils of vermouth into the drink. Blah, blah, blah. Who cares? That has nothing to do with the drink. The drink is a drink, and you have to make it according to the way your audience likes to have it served. It's as simple as that. So, and why can't you do the originals? There's a whole bunch of reasons. Are you ready, children? In the past 25 years, we make our booze to a better standard than we did 100 years ago. It's an organic thing. Wheat changes, pollution changes things, the crops are different every year. There's no way you're going to replicate exactly what was made in 1872.
We were just working on a drink called the Dorchester Cocktail. The Dorchester Cocktail uses forbidden fruit liqueur. Anastatia found a recipe for forbidden fruit liqueur, and we even bought an old bottle of it to test against. But then, as we looked further, we discovered even when they were selling it, you weren't getting the same thing in each bottle.
This is all the same company.
The same company's forbidden fruit from different batches.
And it's just, it's not even oxidation. It's not even oxidation that's causing this, because we matched it up with a couple of other bottles. It's just the way it was produced.
No, blood orange was in season,
Yeah.
blood orange wasn't in season.
There you go.
And things like that. And they didn't care about standardization. And so if you're going to recreate these ingredients, or if you're going to buy a modern version, it won't be exactly what that was. No, mostly it's going to be better.
Now, the other thing that's interesting, especially because I always love the arguments about gin drinks, is you have to make it to a specific and it has to be London dry gin, or it has to be dry gin, It's a little bit of a problem. Some of those drinks that were invented in the 1920s were made with gin, yes. But guess what? The gin had no grain in it. None. It was raw thyme. Most of those were made with sugar beet base, or sugar base. Gin was not gin again until 1961. So all of those drinks you see from the 1920s, 30s, and 40s making gin, it wasn't gin. It was rum with juniper in it. Sorry I said that. It was rum with juniper. Tough. What? Well, it's true. Okay, jump on. So we look at the taste palettes. They change constantly. You know, we've gone from sweet to dry to sweet again to fruity. We go to bitter sometimes, where everybody's putting too much bitters and everything. It happens. And
Not to mention the regional changes on that.
oh yeah, completely. And then there was one example here that we're going to be serving actually for you to do a comparison.
This, of course, was the original cocktail. Cocktail originally referred to one single drink, and that was a drink made with liquor.
Service time. Thank you.
With
Spirit, bitter.
liquor, evolution, sugar, and bitters. That was cocktail. Became called the old-fashioned. The old-fashioned of 25 years ago had cherry, the sugar muddled together. We're going to have a little taste of that.
Yeah.
Don't think we're being mean to you. We're going to taste
We're not
it as well.
punishing you. You have to try both the old style versus the new
We're
style.
going to try the new style, of course, but the new style is still not the correct one. If you want to talk a correct drink, because cocktail was 4 ingredients: spirit, sugar, water, bitters. Oh wait, that's got a twist on it. There's a name for that drink. That's punch. That's not a cocktail, that's punch. Cocktail had no citrus. In fact, the only difference between cocktail and punch, the 5 ingredients: the strong, the weak, the sour, the sweet, and the bitters. The sour, the citrus. So as soon as we put that orange twist on, that's old-fashioned punch.
Yeah, it is old-fashioned punch. Yeah, but it's no, it's also old-fashioned.
But the reason we do it, because it's good. It's good. So we have to remind ourselves not to get so stuck on this. But actually, there was a picture a moment ago of someone making an old-fashioned. Wonderful head bartender at the Dorchester in London. And she has taken the juice from the Luxardo maraschino cherries and put about 15 mils of juice in with the sugar.
I love personalization.
Oh, that is a beautiful old-fashioned. Again, not a cocktail by definition, but who cares?
Doesn't that taste good, guys? Come on. Now here's a couple of other examples. When you realize that the martini, which everybody loves to fight about in the US and in the UK and every place else on the planet, but they forget again that there was one point where if you didn't have a little rinse of absinthe in the glass before you poured in the drink, it wasn't a martini. If I go to Tokyo and I order a martini, if I go to Kanazawa and order a martini, they take a little bit of Bianco vermouth, a little bit of sweetness, swirl it around the glass, and then produce the martini. This is again, one of those things where we really want to explain to people, I don't go place to have an American drink. I don't go to Japan for an American drink. So again, what are you supposed to do?
Oh, finally, the good part.
It's a refresher. If you haven't heard of this before, start thinking about it. Look at terms of what we make and where you can get some inspiration. Look at between 1500 and 1797, before the cocktail was invented. You had Hippocras, basically infused wine with different sorts of botanicals. It's a lovely thing to have as a base instead of using commercial rum. You can make your own. Shrubs, the same thing, being able to store freshness with vinegar. Vinegar is not a bad thing, it's kind of fun sometimes in a drink. The drake. The drake was the original. What do you do?
Oh, you know how it is. The speakers are always forgotten when they're passing out the drinks.
Yeah, where's my drink? So, punch, toddy, okay? This is just in the first couple of hundred years. Different techniques started then too. Infusion, muddling, building, stirring. His favorite thing, he explodes things in front of our fireplace.
This is such a great technique to play around with. Completely different flavor for a hot drink. Because when you put a red hot lump of metal into the drink, it does not just heat the drink, it burns the sugar. It caramelizes the sugar. It adds activated charcoal. So there's so much more that happens when you do this than just making the drink hot. And we're coming into that season for making hot drinks. So this is a lot of fun, but I will caution that the first time you do it, you put that in, and it heats it so quickly, the liquid expands, and it goes the only place it can. It goes out.
Everywhere.
You get it right in the face. Don't worry, it's not hot. It's barely warm.
But it's a
But it
mess.
exploded out. So the way you do it is touch it to the surface. 2, 3, 4, 5, and out. Now it is boiling like it's straight from the kettle.
Yeah, but you've actually done that at the Hot Chin Roof a couple of times.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
And
I've
actually
done this for guests. What was it, 50 guests, 2 seatings a night.
Yeah.
Outdoors on a London rooftop and doing this. And we managed not to injure anyone. You know where the term branding comes from.
Yeah,
Making a strong brand. But yeah, that technique is also great for reheating someone's drink. You can just walk up, pop that in for a moment, and believe me, that goes all over Instagram.
It can happen. Now, birth of the cocktail, yes, 1798, yes, London was the first time the word
Well,
was used to
that's
print.
after the daiquiri was born.
Well, that was after the daiquiri was born. There you go. But again, look at a grouping. If you look at this in groupings,
Tell them that one.
No, you can't tell them that one right now. I'm busy.
Ask me later about how the daiquiri was born in 1762.
Yeah, you can talk about that in a minute. Not right now. Okay, Collins, cocktail, julep, crusta.
Wait, julep.
Julep. What?
I've got this molecular julep recipe. Take even a small
No, you should wait, Wait, no, you have to wait till later.
She says I'll tell you.
Wait
Yeah, but
till
We
later.
don't have too much time.
I know, that's why you have to wait till later. Okay. Cream cocktails. Things that have cream and spirit. They came along actually in the 1850s. It wasn't the 1920s, trust me. Punch jelly, the first time anybody made a jello shot was in the 1850s. It was a French chef in London. Jerry Thomas decided to copy it into his book. Throwing, shaking, rimming in the surface glass, the crusta, the idea that you could actually add a little more flavor, a little introduction of something fun, came in that era.
Why didn't the crusta overtake the cocktail? Too complicated.
Rimming the glass could be a pain in the neck. The American Golden Age. American Golden Age gave us 3 very important features in life. The sour, the sparkling sour, and the Vermouth cocktail, thanks to Harry Johnson, who was born in Königsberg, Prussia, emigrated to the United States, and produced the first cocktail book that had over 175 recipes that had Vermouth in the drink. It's really amazing.
She counted them.
Yeah, I was having a bad day. It happens. Now, Europe, on the other hand, had its own golden age. Again, bottled cocktails, wine cups. Duo cocktails, the idea that all you needed was 2 ingredients, 1 spirit, 1 liqueur, 1 spirit, cream. Trio cocktails, 1 spirit, 1 liqueur, and maybe another bit of liqueur, syrup, or juice. And it would still be a trio. Champagne cocktails came along. Cuban cocktails came along. Cuban cocktails are a unique animal unto themselves, but they were actually introduced to the rest of the world in Harry Craddock's Savoy cocktail book. He had, I believe, 10 or 12 Cuban cocktails that had been brought to him by tourists who said, "This thing is great, you gotta make me one." So he put it in the book. Blender drinks, of course, came along, thank you very much.
Raymond's Gin Fizz would have been a blender drink, except invented 1886, and the blender was 1930.
And I still say Ramos Gin Fizz can be made with a blender. Don't be an idiot. Get it done fast. Come on.
Half the you would use for a pina colada and blend it.
Oh, there we go. Now, I'm going to say, with pride, there has been an era that happened after Prohibition. So for some reason, people keep on telling me there was never any modern drinks made. It's like, come on. You had snappers, you know, Bloody Marys, snapper, modern highballs, which we just wrote an article about. Shooters, believe it or not, shooters started out as layered drinks called the Booze Cafe. I still don't know why shooters are important, because once you put these beautiful 3 layers together, somebody tips the glass and the whole thing blends together. But it tastes good. Fruit martinis came along, molecular drinks, infused cocktails, where all you do is you combine things in a bottle with botanicals, everything else, let it sit for a couple of days, and then, boom. Gin, exactly. Aged and smoked cocktails have come along in the past couple of decades. We've learned how to use cook equipment like dehydrators and sous vide. I love playing with sous vide.
Interesting that making tonic syrup, a very recent thing, there were bartenders who said, "Oh, I want the original tonic, so I'll use cinchona bark." The original tonic was actually made with quinine and was clear. Making tonic with cinchona bark, we traced the history to the year 2000 in New York. Bartender named Brian Van Flanderen at Per Se in the Time Warner Center. That was the first bar to make it with the cinchona bark, and he thought that was historic. He thought it was old style, and so he said it, and after that believed it, but he never actually looked.
Beware of when you say the word historic. It gets scary sometimes. So what does this mean to us? The future. Well, I'll let you start.
Future trends. Based very much on the past, the next big trend in this industry isn't coming, it's already here. And it is localization. Using local products, local ingredients, setting up small production, creating a small brewery, a small winery, making apparent wine, something traditional to the region, making a spirit. And you may not ever become multinational, but that's the point of this. You build the business model based on being successful with one tiny distillery. It can be profitable, you just won't have 75 people working for you, which, trust me, is a headache not worth having anyway.
But it's also not even a matter of having a distillery.
What it is that if you have a product The multinationals will never be able to beat you in your own market.
Yeah,
Guaranteed.
yeah.
You will outsell all of the big brands. And the big brands have no idea how to deal with what's coming, which is most of you are eventually going to get, most of you will eventually start producing a local vermouth. Martini can't compete with you in there.
I make creme de cassis. I make creme de cassis for the dark horse because I've got blackcurrant bushes and I've looked up recipes. It took me about 5 years to finally perfect a recipe that every year I know it's time to pick the berries, I know it's time to rest them on spirit, and I know that when I get home I'm going to have to rush to mash up a bunch of stuff. Then I sweeten it, but it's a local creme de cassis. And it's something that the locals love because they say, hey, it's our plants, it's our area. Yeah, I'll have that drink.
But one of the most important things is to figure out how they make great product.
Yeah. Well,
Strong beer versus small beer.
small beer, strong beer. Now here's something you may not know. They always talk about low ABV. In the UK we have a new movement of people trying to make small beer. What they forgot is the original way of making small beer was you make regular beer and then you use the old mash and the old yeast that's sitting there and you set a little sugar on there and you stick a little more yeast in and boom, you've got another round of beer, a little bit lower in ABV.
So you're upcycling.
Yeah, you're
Reusing.
Well, you're reusing everything because the small beer is the next fermentation after that middle fermentation. So you can end up with 3 products just because you made one batch of something. It's great idea. Same thing, I'm going to jump over one because mead and hydromel is another version. I'm making honey mead right now. All you're doing is taking honey, water, yeast. It is not as simple as you think because there's so many, you guys have more types of honey than we do in the UK. You have acacia honey, you have all sorts of honeys. The level of flavor you can get out of that is amazing. It's also an expensive ingredient.
Where is that article appearing?
That one's going to appear in Class magazine.
She's just written a very detailed article on how to make mead and how to make...
I can know. The only difference between the two is how much honey you use. So if you want to have something that isn't heavily expensive and isn't extremely strong alcohol content-wise, hydromel is another lovely option. You can add herbs and spices to this stuff. You almost killed me one Christmas when I added too much clove in with my orange into my meat, but you know.
She put 5 cloves.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do
It
it.
only needed half a clove.
Yeah, well, you know, I tried. And then I stuck a cinnamon stick in. He was fine about it.
Oh yeah, that was okay.
But so, you know, again, you have to start thinking back. You have to start going ahead of what looks very simple. Adding a few creative touches that you have that you're able to do in your local area. I can never replicate what you can do. You can never replicate what I do. We live in 2 different countries. It's wonderful.
Oh, molecular julep.
Yes, you turn now.
So, lotus still mint whiskey distill. Now you clear mint whiskey. Lotus still with mint and water. Now you have a mint water for dilution. Take sherry and put saffron in it for about 10 days. Then take up the saffron, add an equal measure of sugar to make a saffron syrup. So this is how you add the color back into that julep. Very cool molecular julep. What's even cooler, that recipe comes from a book called The New Dispensatory, published in 1753. Before the julep was invented, and is called julep in the book. You can find The New Dispensatory on Google Books. If you read through this book, you will find dozens.
And you're going to love the saffron syrup. The saffron syrup laid on sherry is unbelievable. I love using that one.
And
We only have a couple of minutes. Tell them about
Ice Spheres, just reading an article, bar in Chicago. Great ice program, perfect ice spheres, 2-inch cubes to control dilution. That article was written in 1898.
I love this. We do this all the time. It's like you sit at home and you think it's going to be a perfectly quiet Sunday morning. And I go, hi honey, guess what we found? I love it.
So if we don't learn from history, we cannot stand on the shoulders of giants.
Well,
we can only stand next to them.
Let's say the real bottom line then. There is no last word in the writing of history. Just keep on looking, because then you're going to make history of your own. That's the whole idea. Is don't stop and say, well, this is what I found in a book. I'm expecting you to go ahead of the book. I'm expecting you to create the next generation's worth of history. Because you can do it. You just have to find a place that is an inspiring point for you to start launching your own thoughts. Are we done?
We are done.
We're done. If you want to get a little table tomorrow, you can come and see us around 4:30. We'll tell you how to make gin.
And don't go too far, because in 15 minutes, a good friend of Leo Dubois will be taking the stage. He's got a great presentation coming for you.